Friday, November 27th. Let's talk PlayStation. So, Sony, this past week, offered some new avatars on PlayStation Network. I just thought this was a little newsworthy because they haven't offered free new avatars in a very long time. So, yeah, I mean, there it is. I mean, there's some on Batman, Little Big Planet 3, Tearaway. Just, they haven't done this in a long time, so I thought that was pretty notable. But maybe something a little bit more notable is this past week, what this guy did basically was he's releasing an unofficial remote play app for PC, basically, where you can stream PlayStation 4 to PC, basically a la remote play, much like, you know, PlayStation 4 to Vita, just streaming the game basically to a computer. Now this is an unofficial app, and this is particularly newsworthy because now, of course, this guy's probably going to get like a cease and desist, and he's trying to like charge for it too, so yeah, this guy's not going to like probably last long. But what's interesting is that Shuhei Yoshida actually followed up on Twitter about this, saying that Sony themselves is working on an official remote play app for PC. So that's actually pretty awesome. So we won't have to rely on this really faulty, buggy app where this guy's trying to make money when ultimately Sony's going to release a proper app at some point. No clue when, but I guess it is coming. Okay, so of course last week we were talking about the PS2 emulation on PlayStation 4 and the whole discussion there of where it was going to go, how it was going to work and everything. So shortly after we kind of had that conversation, Sony XDEV Europe on Twitter tweeted, you know, what games do you want to see basically for PlayStation 4? What PS2 games do you want to see supported through software emulation? Another funny thing is that Paul, oh good lord, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. He's the game director at Evolution Studios, jokingly tweeted back that he wants to see WRC supported, which was an old Evolution game. So, though, I guess the one thing is we really don't have a whole lot of answers just yet in terms of what we were talking about last week. You know, if discs are going to be supported, you know, if it's going to be the same thing on PS3 and Vita, where it's just, you know, strictly PS1, PS2 classics on the store that are being sold and things like that. So, but this maybe kind of gives us a little sense of direction, which is that it is very much in line with what software emulation is, which is that Sony cannot just turn on a switch and all PS2 games are going to be supported. This is going to be a title-by-title process, a very slow process. So it's much like what Microsoft's doing and saying, you know, tell us what 360 games you want on, you know, X1. They got to prioritize certain titles basically to know for sure which games that should be at the head of the list to get supported. At this point, I think we'll get like a real true announcement from Sony, possibly at PlayStation Experience. I mean, they are going to have a press conference basically, so you got to figure they have some sort of announcements up their sleeves, and they never officially commented about PS2 emulation until like the cat just kind of fell out of the bag with that Star Wars bundle. So maybe they might have a real official announcement on stage about PS1 and PS2 classics coming to PlayStation 4, and you know, the full-on support of the current library that's on PS3 and Vita that just sort of transfers over. Basically, they got all those titles running, and now they're going to keep adding more. You know, I don't know, but I would assume that's what they want to do. They want to have some sort of major announcement about this finally, because this isn't something to really scoff about. This is kind of a really big, important feature that is really awesome, and it certainly is a system seller. It is certainly something that is a big revenue stream for Sony. Certainly is reselling games. So, you know, to put PS1 and PS2 classics on the store is a very important thing for Sony. I'm sure they're going to want to talk about it at some point. Alright, so a few weeks ago on Let's Talk PlayStation, we had a news story about how Sony is very close to reaching 30 million systems sold worldwide for PlayStation 4, and guess what? They have now reached that number. So, currently, PlayStation 4 has sold 30.2 million systems worldwide. Big number. They're still selling incredibly well. We talk about this all the time whenever there's like new figures for Sony's numbers with PlayStation 4. They're still doing very, very well. Still outselling the rate, still outpacing the rate of PlayStation 2 in the same time frame. I still believe that at some point it is finally going to taper off a little bit, where PS4 can't keep with the jolt that PlayStation 2 eventually gets, which is what made PlayStation 2 the highest sold system worldwide of all time, basically. So at some point, they're probably not going to be able to keep up with that. But yeah, they're still doing very, very well. And I guess the one thing is that like a few weeks ago when we were talking about this, people were getting really anal about the difference of whether the systems were sold directly to consumers or if they were sold just to retailers. Which, you know, yeah, I mean, if you want to like really get technical about, oh, they're not sold just yet, or oh, they're not at this number just yet, but if you gotta figure this is PlayStation 4 we're talking about, and it's doing incredibly well. So whether they are or are not sold through, the system just saw a price drop. It's pretty obvious that they're going to sell those systems at some point. Either way, I'm sure Sony is still pretty damn happy about this, and it's just, I'm remembering that we did the predictions video, at the start of 2015. I did my 2015 predictions video for PlayStation, and I think I predicted that PS4 was going to hit around 36 million units sold, at the end of 2015. So the holidays, I would hope, are very, very good for Sony, so they can get closer to my number, because if they sold, that many units in just that short amount of time, and with the holidays going over and all the, Black Friday deals and things like that, people are going to be buying PS4s like crazy. So we'll see what they're at once the year is over. For our last news story, I want to talk about how Sony was at the 2015 Montreal Game Summit, and they were kind of discussing directly with developers about PlayStation VR and kind of guiding them basically on how they should approach their games. And it just kind of goes back to what we've been saying for a while now, which is that it's pretty evident that with PlayStation VR, Sony is really trying to, I guess, I don't know, I don't want to say pioneer for lack of a better word, but certainly move the space in a direction where it becomes a huge business, and it can enter the mainstream, and it can properly impress people and show people that VR actually is something, right? That it's not just this gimmick, it's not just this throwaway thing that people are always easily kind of scoffing it as. Sony's kind of advising developers like, hey, if you're going to do virtual reality, here's the way to do it. So basically Sony's recommending that with developers, 60 frames per second is like the bare minimum, but you should really be aiming for 90 frames per second, or, you want to shoot for as high frames as possible. So like 120 is certainly ideal, and that's what Sony's telling developers, that look, frame rate's important. It really helps with the experience of virtual reality, and you gotta go far with it. So 60 frames is like the bare minimum, and ideally it's just not something that you want, because it's just not going to make the game the best comfortable experience for the player. They were also discussing how with PlayStation VR, again, like in an ideal situation, you want to develop your game in a way where the player is constantly seated. You don't want to have them in a sort of scenario where they feel like they have to keep reaching out and kind of moving around and moving out of the seat, I guess, because that's like kind of dangerous, I guess, because the person's got a head mask on. They don't know what's around them. They can't visibly see the desk and everything, or wherever they are. So that's another thing that Sony's doing, is just saying, hey, when you're developing your game, you got to keep these things in mind, which is good for this little bit of guidance, because this is a completely new way to sort of approach game development. And we've been seeing this for a while now with Oculus dev kits, and how long Oculus has been in a lot of developers' hands, which is that it's a completely different perspective of how you develop games. Initially, when Sony debuted PlayStation VR, and it was still called Project Morpheus, they were telling people it's all about just the immersion, basically. It's all about that actual feeling of being in a virtual space. Instead of patching a game for virtual reality, a game should be designed from the ground up for virtual reality. So, just despite any opinions you may have about virtual reality in a negative sense, I mean, you can't deny that Sony, Oculus, and a lot of other manufacturers are really trying to make this thing a good thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just a gimmick. Like, you can't just, it's got to be a good product. You have to want to make something really, really good to see that money, because if you don't have that kind of desire to actually create something good, nobody's going to want it, because it's just not going to be a good product. You know what I'm saying? You got to try. If you want to be a big multi-millionaire, multi-billion dollar business, you want to be a creator, you want to do whatever you want, you got to actually put some thought into it. You got to actually put some talent into it. So I still have high hopes for virtual reality, and a lot of people that have tried it will tell you they really enjoy it. So I guess right now what we should be doing is, again, waiting for PlayStation Experience, because that's where we'll probably hear some more about PSVR, maybe some more titles announced. Maybe we'll finally get the price for it, which, again, we know it's not going to be cheap. But I always say this, I am super optimistic, and I can't wait. Those are just some of the news stories I want to talk about with you guys this week. So for Right On Gaming, we did the future of consoles. What are they going to turn into? We've talked about this for a while now. on Let's Talk PlayStation, but let's do it in its own separate video, its own long conversations. Where is consoles really going to go? Are they going to be a streaming service? Are they going to be a set-top box? Are they going to go all digital? That's what that conversation is. Check that out. Also, the Jak 2 Let's Play is still going on, but the cool video this past week was I showed you guys an unboxing of the new Jak 2 statue I got, which is so damn cool. I love that thing so much. Yeah, I want to swear there, basically. I do. Dude, that fucking Jak 2 statue is so cool. I'm so happy with that purchase. Just like the Jak 1 statue I have back there, which a lot of you guys sometimes will point out, like, oh, where'd you get that statue and stuff. So, yeah, watch that video too if you want to gawk at how fucking awesome that statue is. Alright, I'm done plugging my own video. So, that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Rob Becky. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I'll see you guys next Friday.